Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the stone-cooled corridors of ancient Babylon, where royal women soaked in breast milk beneath painted ceilings while eunuchs waved feathered fans. The scent of frankincense curls through the air, mixing with something richer, warm milk, heated by the desert sun and poured into alabaster tubs. Outside, the streets of Babylon bake under the Mesopotamian sun, but in here, behind gold-leaf doors, time feels thick and soft. You walk slowly, your bare feet silent on veined marble floors that seem too clean to be real. The chamber you're entering isn't just a bathhouse, it's a beauty temple disguised as leisure. Inside, a noble woman leans her head back, eyes half-lidded, while a servant pours a stream of white liquid across her shoulders. It's breast milk, allegedly from young, well-fed women. And if that doesn't make your modern skincare routine seem minimalist, wait until you hear about the crushed lapis masks. You dip your hand in the pool, and it's surprisingly cool, perfumed with lavender and clove. Rumour has it that the Queen's bathwater is changed twice daily, never reused, and filtered through linen 3 times. You probably won't survive this economy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love knowing when and where we're drifting off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A high window filters slanted light across the tiles, illuminating a tray of glistening dates, rose petal paste, and a carnelian comb. Everything here is intentional. The milk believed to soften the skin, reverse aging, and please the gods who supposedly took personal offence to sagging eyelids. You kneel beside one of the tubs, and a handmaid dips a cloth, wrings it with a practiced twist, and gently presses it to her mistress's cheeks. Upward strokes only. Always. You pass by another woman, older perhaps, but with skin so luminous it's nearly translucent. She turns, barely acknowledging you, and murmurs about how Cleopatra was nothing but a Babylonian copycat. That's the thing. Babylon was bathing in milk centuries before the Nile's famous queen allegedly did. Historians still argue whether it was truly breast milk, or goat milk, or just a poetic metaphor. But considering the enormous number of wet nurses employed at court, some promoted to roles of unexpected influence, it's not a stretch to imagine a steady supply. Nearby, 2 girls sit cross-legged beside a large clay amphora, whispering and giggling. One dips a finger in the milk, tastes it, then makes a face. Apparently, even ancient spa days had their drama. Some claim the milk was always mixed with honey or date syrup, not for consumption, but to soothe the skin and mask the tangy scent. A fringe theory suggests certain priestesses blessed the milk under moonlight, whispering incantations to ensure it wouldn't curdle or curse. You trace your fingers along the edge of the tub. The stone is veined with pinkish quartz, imported from distant lands, maybe Elam or Susa. Everything in this room was earned, claimed, or conquered. Even the serenity. A scribe stands quietly in the corner, etching lines onto a wax tablet. She's here to record treatments, not gossip. Of course, only the essentials when the queen bathed. Which oils were used, how long she soaked. You wonder if somewhere a dusty museum drawer holds the exact record of this bathhouse. Now mistaken for a logbook of trade, behind a lattice screen the air thickens. The warm, almost syrupy scent of milk grows headier. Like vanilla and old paper, One bath attendant rubs powdered myrrh into her palms before massaging it into the noblewoman's calves. It's part ritual, part beauty routine, and part diplomacy. Touch, here, is language. A girl drops a bronze bowl with a clatter, and no one flinches. The acoustics of the chamber dampen the noise, probably on purpose. Sleepiness creeps into your limbs as the milk-soaked air settles on your skin like a second breath. One servant fans the doorway with a reed mat dipped in rose water, meant to keep flies away. Another places petals carefully counted, exactly 88 on the bath's surface. It's said that the number keeps demons confused and beauty aligned. Again, historians are still debating whether this was spiritual belief or just fashionable numerology. In a corner, a stack of linens embroidered with crescent moons waits to be wrapped around the bathers. The fabric is impossibly fine, so sheer it looks like moonlight in textile form. You reach out to touch it but hesitate. Everything here feels both ancient and oddly alive, as if the walls themselves remember every whispered compliment and insult exchanged over milk and perfume. Just then, a eunuch enters silently, bearing a small jar, its amber glass, sealed with wax. Inside, allegedly, the queen's favourite oil pressed from a rare nut that only blooms during sandstorms, harvested by hand, stored in shadow. Whether that's true or just an exaggerated sales pitch by a particularly persuasive court merchant is anyone's guess. But when the oil is warmed and poured onto her collarbone, the queen sighs. That's the sound of 2,000 years evaporating into steam. You rest your back against the warm tile. The ceiling is painted with stars, tiny constellations of crushed lapis and mother of pearl. They shimmer faintly, even in shadow. Somewhere beyond those stars, history turns noisily, but here it's all slowed breath and careful ritual. You close your eyes for a moment. A drop of milk hits the tile beside you with a soft splash. Someone hums a lullaby in a language no longer spoken aloud, and you think, maybe this is what eternity smells like: jasmine, milk, and something quietly divine. You stay low, half hidden behind a woven screen, as the perfume steam curls toward the ceiling and vanishes into silence. In Babylon, the palace bath isn't just about cleanliness, it's a theatre, and everyone plays their part. But unlike the bickering you'd expect in a modern spa, here, every sentence is spoken in half tones. Every compliment is a veiled insult. Every soft giggle carries the weight of rivalry. A servant walks by, carrying a shallow tray of glass vials filled with amber, ochre, and emerald liquids. Each one smells stronger than the last myrrh, spikenard, even a drop of the elusive blue lotus oil from Egypt, smuggled in with great ceremony. These oils are not just for the body, they're weapons, worn like armour beneath gauzy silk. A single drop behind the ear could mean the difference between being noticed by the king or forgotten. You inch closer to the harem's inner chamber, where wives and concubines lounge on silk cushions. You expect whispering. Instead, the room is oddly quiet, like the moment before thunder. They're listening to each other, to every footstep, every rustle of fabric, because in this space, silence is as sharp as speech. One woman fans herself slowly, her coal-lined eyes tracking every movement. Her name is Ninsun. You don't know that, of course. But she radiates the weary power of someone who's survived more selection ceremonies than she cares to count. Her perfume is jasmine layered with a smoky undertone burned sandalwood mixed with something unfamiliar. One historian claims it may have been derived from roasted ambergris, but others dismiss that as impossible. Either way, it clings to her like legacy. She offers a lazy smile to the younger girl beside her, no older than 16, who's biting into a fig with more anxiety than appetite. That fig isn't just a snack, it's a performance. Every gesture in this room is measured. You watch a third woman gently adjust her headscarf, flashing a gold earring shaped like a cuneiform symbol, perhaps a name, perhaps a prayer. You wish you could read it. From the far side, two women exchange glances that last just a beat too long. One raises an eyebrow, the other nods slightly. That's all. And yet you can feel the tension spike, like static before a storm. Later, when servants wash the linen, they might find strands of hair that weren't supposed to be there. Some soaked with rose oil, some, maybe, dipped in ink. A few feet away, an older attendant begins massaging oil into another woman's calves. Slow, circular strokes meant to drain excess heat. According to Babylonian medicine, emotions collect in the legs, sadness in the left, envy in the right. Or maybe it was the other way around. Historians still debate whether these were actual beliefs or poetic metaphors recorded by bored scribes. Over by the window, laughter finally breaks out. The joke, it seems, is about a eunuch who confused clove oil with pig fat. An error that led to a rather sticky diplomatic incident. You don't know what's funnier, the mistake or the fact that the story's been retold for the 20th time. In here, gossip is currency. What you hear matters less than how you spin it. A servant sets down a plate of dried apricots arranged in a spiral. You realise that even snacks have symbolic weight. Apricots for fertility, almonds for clarity. A single pomegranate seed placed at the centre, a reminder of death, rebirth, or just that someone's read too much Akkadian poetry. You linger by a tall bronze mirror. Its surface is dull, distorted like it's hiding something. A woman passes behind you and murmurs, "Careful, these walls have ears." Then she taps the edge of the mirror twice, and the light shifts strangely, revealing a seam you hadn't noticed, a hidden door, a servant's passage. Maybe, or maybe she just enjoys messing with new faces. You'll never know. Then, as if on cue, another figure glides into view, tall, regal, and trailing a scent of crushed lilies. Her gown ripples like water. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Every woman straightens subtly as she approaches. You suspect this is the favoured consort, the one who bathes last, alone, with the freshest milk and the most expensive oil. Behind her, two handmaids carry silver basins filled with warm water and dried mint. One of them hums softly, a lullaby from the north. You recognise nothing of the tune, but its sorrow lingers in your ribs. The favoured woman sits, and instantly, an attendant brings her a delicate glass bottle shaped like a swan. Inside a rare oil rumoured to reverse wrinkles overnight. The recipe's been lost to time, but guesses range from saffron and almond milk to ground-up fish scales. Scholars continue to argue about it, particularly because the only known record of the mixture is smeared with water damage and what might be mascara. You step back as the room turns quiet again. No one dares speak while she massages the oil into her temples. It's a ritual, or maybe a spell. She closes her eyes. The light hits her face at just the right angle. You suddenly wonder if the milk baths even matter at all, or if this whole palace has been designed like a stage. Every beam, every window, every echo part of the performance. Perhaps that's the real secret to eternal beauty, convincing the world to believe it. Somewhere in the distance, a gong sounds softly. A servant whispers that it's time for incense, time for stretching, time to prepare for the sunset procession. But you're already sinking into the cushions, lulled by the rhythm of whispered stories, the warmth of the room, and the steady pulse of courtly tension disguised as grace. One woman yawns, a luxury. Here, yawning means you're not worried someone's plotting your downfall. You're safe. For now. You rise slowly, legs still tingling from the lingering warmth of the bathhouse, and follow the fading perfume trail of the court's most mysterious corridor. This hallway is quieter, less chatter, more ritual. The walls are carved with scenes from forgotten myths, winged bulls, moon goddesses, and strange, fluid symbols that seem to shift when you're not looking directly at them. As you pass a panel showing a woman pouring a liquid into a basin, you notice something odd. Beside her stands a goat, and on the opposite side, a wet nurse with a child. It's a snapshot of Babylonian priorities: fertility, nourishment, and status, all flowing through milk. But what kind of milk? The palace Kii, of course, claims it's exclusively human-gathered from young wet nurses carefully selected for their health, loyalty, and aesthetic appeal. These women were reportedly kept on specific diets, given sweet fruits, and forbidden to experience stress. That's right, stress. In ancient Babylon, you watch a young girl, barely more than a child herself, hand over a clay jug of fresh milk to an older attendant. She does it reverently, as though it's sacred. In a way, it is. Still, historians aren't so sure. Some argue the amount of breast milk needed for these daily royal baths would have required an entire building full of lactating women. Others suggest it was mixed with goat's milk, or cow's milk, or even date sap, depending on the season. A few fringe theorists claim the whole thing was metaphorical, just symbolic language in ritual poems. But when you consider the milk amphorae marked for skin only, it's hard not to take things a bit more literally. You trail behind the procession headed to the temple quarters, past a tiled courtyard shaded with fig trees. A woman stops to adjust her veil and mutters that the milk of goddesses is being prepared. It's a common phrase around here. Is it metaphor or marketing? In one of the palace's cool storage rooms, you find massive jars sealed with beeswax. The smell that escapes when one is opened is sweet and faintly nutty. A priestess dips her fingers in and blesses the surface with murmured Akkadian phrases. You notice that not all the milk is white. Some has been infused with herbs, mint, chamomile, even bits of gold leaf. For youth, the attendant whispers, for softness, for favour. There's also a rumour whispered like a bedtime story gone wrong that certain elite women demanded the milk of specific wet nurses, believing one woman's milk gave clearer skin while another's improved fertility. One noblewoman is said to have thrown a tantrum that ended with an entire nursery wing being reassigned. Over skin tone. You let that sink in as you pass a silver dish of sliced quince, meant to cool the blood after a milk soak. A curious detail catches your eye. Each milk amphora is stamped with a seal and image of a lioness suckling her cubs. There's strength in this symbol, but also an unsettling sense of control. These women, elevated as they are, still exist in a system that quantifies their bodies. You watch a servant tally out portions in chalk on a slate board. 1 amphora, 2 amphora, 3, and the queen hasn't even stepped into her chamber yet. The halls narrow as you enter what's known as the nourishment wing. Here, the wet nurses live. Surprisingly, it doesn't smell like milk. Instead, there's the faint scent of sesame and cedarwood. You pass a room with 4 women seated in a circle, each holding an infant. Some nurse, some rest. One woman massages her own shoulders while humming a lullaby. You don't understand the words, but the tune is ancient, older than the palace, maybe older than Babylon itself. On the wall is a faded inscription. Milk is the bridge between the divine and the doomed. You pause. That's intense. But you can't deny that here, in this palace. It feels true. Everything sacred is also strange. You watch a priestess sprinkle rose petals into a shallow bowl of milk, then stir it counterclockwise. When you ask why, she says, that's the way time moves when it's unkind. Not helpful. Very poetic. Very Babylonian. The milk, once gathered, doesn't go straight to the baths. It's filtered twice through linen, once through crushed quartz. The resulting liquid is stored in shadowed corners, far from the sun, and blessed by temple scribes who write protection spells on the clay jars. You notice one with a line scratched deeply across the surface. It reads, "Let no sourness spoil this skin." Some scholars think these rituals were more for show than substance, arguing that filtering milk through quartz does nothing but waste quartz. Others insist it had symbolic meaning, milk purified by the earth's bones, made sacred by silence. No one agrees, of course. Historians never do. You return to the bathing quarters in time to see a particularly glamorous woman, cheeks flushed from wine and a recent massage step into a half-filled pool. The milk shimmers. Her skin gleams. You'd think this was a pageant, but no. It's just Tuesday. She leans back, eyes closed, as attendants pour warmed milk over her shoulders. Her hair is wrapped in silk to prevent split ends. One servant dabs her forehead with a cloth soaked in mint water. Another brushes pollen over her cheeks, just a hint of cold dust, caught in the light like a blessing. And for a brief moment, as you sit beside the pool, toes barely touching the warm, sweet surface, you start to believe it all. That youth can be bottled, that skin can forget time, that milk, of all things, can be divine. And then someone drops a jar, and the spell breaks. A splash of sacred milk hits the tile. An attendant rushes in with towels. Another mutters something about bad omens, but the queen doesn't flinch. She just smiles faintly and says, "More milk." The palace begins to hum as the heat of the afternoon eases into golden stillness. You drift along the colonnade toward a quieter wing where incense curls from brass dishes and beauty is a full-time occupation. The marble beneath your feet is warm, but not hot sun-kissed, just enough to remind you that beyond these walls, the desert is relentless. Inside, however, time melts like butter in a brass bowl, and nobody dares speak of aging aloud. You enter a room lit by oil lamps polished so bright they mimic starlight. In the centre, a table stretches long and low, lined with tiny ceramic jars. This is the beautician's hall, part apothecary, part dreamscape. 2 women sit cross-legged, grinding something into a paste with rosewood mortars. You lean in. The smell is a strange mix of almonds and ash, crushed pearl and burnt almond, you're told. For the cheeks, it brings light to the face, says one of the women, tapping her own brow. Like the moon after the storm. Right. And possibly also arsenic, but we're not going to ruin the mood. Everything here has a purpose. That small dish of crushed date seeds for tightening the skin. The powder in the blue vial mica, imported at scandalous cost, to be dusted over the collarbone before royal banquets. If you thought contouring was invented by beauty influencers in 2012, Babylon would like a word. One of the women unwraps a cloth bundle and reveals a tiny spoon made of obsidian. Only obsidian, she says softly. Copper disturbs the paste. Historians are still unsure whether this was based on actual reaction or just superstition. Either way, there's something undeniably ceremonial in the way she handles it, like a priestess handling relics instead of a stylist preparing a facial. Next comes the clay. Oh, the clay! There are tubs of it in varying hues, red, green, even a silvery ash colour harvested from the banks of the Euphrates. One is labelled simply with a carved mark for the night of the third moon. You don't ask. A concubine enters, escorted by 2 maids. She looks exhausted, though her skin gleams like polished alabaster. She's here for a mask, the kind that tightens and stings and leaves your face feeling like it's been kissed by a desert wind. You watch as a beautician paints it on with the steady hand of someone trained in both medicine and flirtation. The mask smells faintly of copper, rosewater, and something vaguely fishy. Not unpleasant, just odd. The concubine sighs as the paste begins to harden. Her eyes close. Her chest rises and falls in slow rhythm. She's meditating, or pretending to. Either way, the room quiets. Even the birds outside the high window fall silent, as if beauty requires reverence. To one side, you spot a scroll laid open on a wooden stand. It's filled with recipes masks for winter, oils for sorrow, powders for seduction. One corner is stained with something oily and iridescent. You lean in and read a line aloud for the skin to reject time. Boil 3 tears in goat milk and apply before dawn. Go ahead. Try asking a historian whether that was literal. The debate will outlive you. The older beautician chuckles. That one was for the queen who believed the moon made her older. She wore veils on full moons and bathed only in moonless water. That's either poetic paranoia or radical skincare theory. The line blurs frequently here. A younger servant walks by holding a mirror-polished bronze, so smooth it could reflect your thoughts. As she adjusts it, light spills onto a bowl of shimmering powder. It's a mix of dried flower petals, bone dust, and powdered turquoise. For the arms, she explains, to make them look lyrical. You nod, pretending to understand. Nearby, someone is preparing a balm by stirring it gently over a brazier. The scent hits you like a lullaby lavender. Cumin, milk, fat. It's thick and glistening like warm honey. She dips a feather in and paints it across the back of her hand. It keeps the skin from remembering too much, she says. Whatever that means. One of the more curious treatments involves something called wind pressing. A thin cloth is soaked in camphor and laid over the face, then fanned gently until it adheres to the skin like a second layer. Once it hardens, it's peeled off in silence. No talking during the procedure. Apparently, speaking wrinkles the soul. You hear a soft splash from the next room. Another milk bath is being drawn, but this time with added crushed lotus pods and an oil believed to calm the liver. Because of course, in Babylon, your liver affects your laugh lines. A rumour drifts through the air a certain court favourite once used a paste made of cow's bile and date syrup to lighten freckles. Another, more eccentric woman reportedly imported silkworm cocoons from the east, soaked them in vinegar, and rubbed them on her cheeks nightly. Historians still argue whether that did anything at all, or if the placebo effect goes back further than we thought. The beauticians begin to pack up for the evening, slipping their tools into embroidered pouches and wrapping their jars in linen. One woman lays a final cloth over the scroll of recipes, bowing her head slightly as if bidding it good night. You step back into the corridor. The scent of rose oil trails behind you like a sigh. Outside, the palace walls glow amber in the fading sun, but within, the pursuit of agelessness continues quiet, fragrant, and meticulous. And you think to yourself, maybe beauty didn't come from magic or milk. Maybe it came from repetition, from ritual, from the belief that time could be managed one almond paste mask at a time. You wander down a side corridor, following the faint scent of something earthy, not in a bad way, more like the smell of wet clay and old papyrus left in the sun. You turn a corner and there it is, a shelf lined with tightly sealed jars, all labelled in cuneiform. One jar sits open. You peek in and immediately regret it. It's brown, thick, pasty, smells like a swamp during a heat wave. A nearby attendant glances at you and smirks, clearly amused. For the skin, she says, keeps the sun from eating you alive. You don't ask any further questions, because it dawns on you this must be the famed crocodile dung sunscreen. Yes, really. Historians still debate whether it was actual crocodile droppings or just a misunderstood type of mineral-rich mud. Either way, someone back then thought smearing it on your face was a good idea, and you're standing in a room that still honours the tradition, albeit with more clove oil to mask the smell. A noble woman walks past, her face shining slathered in the stuff, her expression unreadable beneath the dark mask. She's chatting casually about sandalwood shortages and whether anyone's seen the moon yet. Babylonian palace life waits for no one, not even when you smell like a reptilian swamp creature. In the corner, two girls are mixing different ingredients into small bowls. One pinches in some ground date seeds, another adds a few drops of honey. The mix thickens. One girl shrugs and dips her finger in to try it. She makes a face, still too dungy. They giggle. You realise beauty in Babylon is a strange mix of trial, error, and a surprising amount of bravery. Above their heads hangs a bronze tablet inscribed with the saying, "The sun honours the bold," which is probably what someone told the first poor soul to slather herself in crocodile paste. You're ushered next into another bathing area, this one more open, with tall windows that filter in slanted rays of sunlight. The floor here is tiled in warm ochre tones, and a small pool glistens in the centre. Instead of milk, this bath is filled with cooled herbal infusions. Calendula petals float on the surface, and the air smells faintly of myrtle and cedar. A woman reclines on a cushioned bench, her hair wrapped in linen strips soaked in vinegar and salt water. "For shine," her maid explains, "and to chase away spirits that cling to hair after bad dreams." Another treatment rooted in equal parts beauty and belief. Historians remain puzzled about how much of Babylonian beauty culture was practical and how much was spiritual performance. Was the crocodile dung actually believed to prevent sun damage, or was it a charm against illness, a ritual layer of protection in a world full of unknowns? The line between science and superstition was blurrier than the coal around these women's eyes. At a corner table, a woman grinds blue pigment in a shallow dish. "For eye coal," she says. "It's from lapis, the deep blue stone. The gods like it." There's a soft pride in her voice, as if she's preparing not makeup, but a holy offering. And maybe she is. Nearby, a wall niche holds jars labelled moon oil, silver balm, and noonday paste. They're used at specific times of day and only on certain body parts. One for elbows, one for behind the ears, one strictly for ankles. Why ankles? No one explains. That's just how it's done. A group of younger attendants gather near a long bench, trying out face-stretching exercises, pulling and pinching their cheeks in synchronized patterns while one of them counts aloud. 7 to the left, 7 to the right. It's like a gym routine for your face. You don't laugh, not because it's rude, but because you're too busy wondering whether it might actually work. The sound of gentle drumming carries in from a nearby courtyard. It's not a celebration, just the music used to time hair treatments. When the drums stop, the paste is ready to be washed out. Someone claps softly twice. A servant appears with a brass bowl filled with warm, mint-scented water. Rinsing begins. You walk slowly toward a smaller alcove, where the walls are lined with polished copper. In the glow of the setting sun, your own reflection stares back at you, haloed in the dim shimmer of sandalwood smoke. A beautician appears at your side, offering a cloth. You've been observing, she says gently, but beauty doesn't like to be watched too long. She dips the cloth in warm milk and wipes your brow. It's soothing, surprisingly so, and you think about how even the strangest rituals have a kind of logic. Crocodile dung, lapis eyeliner, vinegar hair wraps it all points to the same desire to hold time still, or at least make peace with its passage. As you move back toward the central corridor, a final figure glides past, a matronly woman with silver-threaded hair and the posture of someone who's seen many queens rise and fall. She wears no mask, no balm, no paste, just a knowing expression and a faint smell of mint. Sometimes the best protection, she murmurs, is to make them think you've already aged. Then she vanishes into shadow. You step through a narrow archway into one of the most tranquil spaces in the entire palace, a sleeping chamber reserved for the highest-ranking consorts. The air shifts. It's cooler here, infused with the sweet hush of sandalwood smoke and something floral you can't quite place. Maybe lavender, maybe crushed lilies left under pillows until they've given up their scent completely. The ceiling arches high above, painted deep blue like a midnight sky. Stars glint from the plaster, some in gold leaf, others made from crushed pearl pressed into wet clay. And in the centre of the room, like the still eye of a spinning world, is the Queen's bed. It is not, as you might expect, an extravagant mountain of silk and furs. No, it's low to the ground, wide, and wrapped in fine linen so white it seems to glow. The real extravagance is in the air around it. Every breath is curated. Every corner of this chamber is designed to seduce rest, as if even sleep needs encouragement here. Beside the bed stands a fan-bearer, not one of those decorative peacock feather things, but a real person, tall and quiet, trained to move the air just enough to lull not chill. He sways gently, his arm rising and falling in a rhythm that mimics breath itself. You almost fall asleep just watching him. At the foot of the bed is a footstool carved with protective symbols. Lions, bulls, serpents biting their own tails. "To chase dreams away," says a soft voice. You turn to see a handmaid smoothing the bed covers, her movements as practiced as prayer. She tucks a small sachet of herbs beneath the pillow mugwort, rose petals, and a dash of ash from a sacred fire. Keeps the Queen's mind from wandering too far, she whispers. It's clear that sleep here is not a private thing. It's an art form, a ceremony, a performance. There are 12 attendants assigned to the Queen's night routine. 12. each with a task as specific as it is strange. One oils her feet, another braids her hair loosely, so her dreams don't get tangled. A third adjusts the light from the lamp so it falls in just the right place, enough to illuminate her face if she wakes, but not enough to startle. 2 attendants stand by, ready to switch out the sheets in the middle of the night should she so much as sigh heavily. Another is on standby with a warmed cloth infused with camphor to dab her forehead should she dream of fire. One, known only as the dream catcher, writes down anything she mumbles in her sleep. Whether it's prophecy or nonsense, no one knows, but the scrolls are kept in a locked chest nonetheless. And that's not even counting the one whose entire job is to watch the Queen's face for signs of frowning, because frowning, in Babylon, is believed to cause early wrinkling if done while unconscious. Yes, even dreams are policed here. The mattress itself stuffed with feathers of migratory birds believed to bring peaceful visions. The sheet edges are embroidered with spells, just single-line invocations to the moon god Sin, asking for rest and softness and protection from snakes, both literal and metaphorical. At a small table beside the bed sits an oil lamp shaped like a lion cub. Its flame flickers low and steady, fed by oil pressed from olives grown in a distant grove. Some claim the grove was planted by a former queen herself, and that burning the oil connects her spirit to the sleeper. Historians mostly roll their eyes at that one, but a few admit there's no solid evidence against it either. On the table next to the lamp is a glass of something pale and frothy. It looks like milk, but it's thicker, glossier. You're told it's a blend of goat's milk, honey, and powdered poppy root, to soothe, the attendant says, and soften the inside of the mind. You resist the urge to ask if it actually works. Everyone here seems convinced. A bell chimes softly in the hallway. That means the Queen has finished her final beauty ritual for the night. The bathing, the oiling, the chanting all complete. Soon she'll glide into the room, silent and scent-wrapped, like the physical embodiment of serenity. You tuck yourself into a corner of the chamber, trying not to disturb anything. The floor cushions here are impossibly soft, stuffed with cotton imported from lands farther east than even the most travelled scribe could name. You sink in, grateful, and then she enters, not with fanfare, but with calm gravity, the Queen. Her hair glows with the residue of moon oil. Her face is bare unmasked, ungilded, but somehow still luminous. The attendants lower their heads as she passes. She says nothing. She never speaks before sleep. It's part of the spell. She lies down. The bedding ripples around her. One servant adjusts her headrest. Another mists the air with a faint spray of orange blossom water. And the last ritual begins. A servant kneels and recites a series of phrases in Akkadian, a sleep litany. It includes blessings, warnings, apologies to the gods for disturbing their peace with dreams. One phrase repeats, "Let the eyes of the Queen close with favour." You find yourself whispering it too, without quite knowing why. And just like that, her breathing deepens. One of the fan-bearers slows his rhythm, the others back away. The room holds its breath. The Queen is asleep. You close your eyes too, and in the stillness, you wonder if rest here is this sacred. Maybe that's the real luxury, not the milk baths or the powdered pearl masks, but the permission to surrender, to sleep deeply, softly, safely, with 12 people guarding your dreams like they were treasure. You wake, or at least drift into awareness just before dawn. The sky outside is still navy blue, the stars reluctantly fading behind the palace latticework. But inside the harem chambers, the day has already begun. You follow the soft patter of bare feet into the corridors where the other kind of war is quietly warming up. There are no swords here, no blood, but make no mistake, this is combat, a war of glances, of perfumes, of well-timed silences and perfectly timed entrances. The harem is not a cage, it's a court of influence, and no one here is sleeping in. A concubine with hips like a goddess drapes a violet shawl over one shoulder and takes her place in the main atrium, adjusting the angle of her body to catch the first light. She knows exactly what she's doing. Another woman sweeps past, trailing rosewood scent and enough attitude to leave scorch marks on the mosaic floor. You can feel the tension rising like heat before a summer storm. The king will be walking the upper balcony this morning. He might glance down, or he might not. But in Babylon, might is everything. A small cluster of women gathers near the fountain. They're pretending to admire the lilies, but they're really watching the favourite Ninsen again, draped in white linen with skin that catches the light just enough to be considered divine but not smug. She knows she's watched, and she sips her fig wine like she's utterly unbothered, a masterstroke. Nearby, a younger girl fidgets with her veil, then smiles too brightly at a passing eunuch. Rookie mistake. Too eager, she'll be noted, and not in a good way. Every movement here is calculated. Even the way one woman brushes dust from her sleeve is layered with subtext. Did she mean to draw attention to her bangles? Is she mocking the embroidery of the woman beside her, or is it just dust? Historians still argue whether these social codes were formalized or simply evolved over time. Some claim the palace had its own etiquette scrolls. Others say women learned by watching and mimicking survival through osmosis. And they had plenty to survive. You pass a small chamber where two women sit face to face, murmuring over a game of knucklebones. One drops a piece. The other picks it up, brushing her thumb along the girl's wrist a moment too long. Allies, rivals, sisters. You can't tell. But you know better than to assume gentleness means safety. A servant brings in a platter of morning offerings, dried apricots, sweet cheese, rosewater cakes. One woman declines, saying she's fasting for a vision. Another accepts 2 helpings with a smile sharp enough to slice melon. Food, too, is part of the game. Out by the reflecting pool, the real show begins. The favourite descends a few steps, just enough to let her toe skim the water. The gesture is so subtle, so slow. It might be mistaken for thoughtlessness unless you notice the exact moment she turns her face toward the balcony. Is the king even watching? Does it matter? A peacock lets out a cry, absurd and majestic. It struts along the marble edge, flashing its tail as if auditioning for divine status. Everyone pretends not to notice, which means everyone absolutely notices. Another woman emerges barefoot, hair loose, expression serene. She's the widow of a former prince, allowed to stay in the harem due to some obscure clause in the royal family's contracts. Her presence is both a relic and a threat. She doesn't compete anymore, which makes her the most dangerous one of all. She smiles at no one. She sits beside the pool, and within moments, several younger women shift their positions just slightly, so they're no longer sitting taller than she is. It's a pecking order written in posture. You start to see the battlefield now, the morning rituals, the shared cosmetics, the gossip. These are arrows and shields. No one yells, no one fights. They don't have to. A story surfaces gently, like a fish rising to the top of a still pond. Someone whispers that a certain consort's perfume was watered down. Someone else says her linen veil tore and she had to stitch it herself. Scandalous. Sewing implies she wasn't attended to, that someone somewhere decided she wasn't worth attending. One woman walks past with a scent so potent it practically speaks cinnamon and cedar, a blend normally reserved for the king himself. Was it deliberate? Did she accidentally grab his vial? A few raised eyebrows suggest the message landed. Elsewhere, a different sort of message is being sent. Two women carry a basket between them, filled with crushed flowers. They stop at the foot of a statue, kneel, and pour the petals into a bowl at its base. For favour. One murmurs, for peace. But the statue is of a lesser-known fertility goddess rarely worshipped in this part of Babylon. That's a choice. That's a statement. Historians have found altars like this one hidden deep in palace ruins, some with symbols scratched over or changed entirely. Was it rebellion, desperation, beauty politics in disguise? No one agrees, but the theories are delicious. As the sun creeps higher, the court dancers arrive to practice in the garden. Their silks flutter like butterflies as they spin. It's said that if a dancer's foot brushes yours, it brings luck, but if she trips in your presence, it brings disgrace. One woman steps back quickly as a dancer stumbles, just in case. A bell tolls in the distance. The king has appeared. All faces turn upward, as if by instinct. No one cranes. No one gawks. But every jawline is angled, every hand delicately placed, every glance upward engineered for maximum flattery. You look too, and yes, there he is, a figure in silhouette, behind a golden screen, just watching, or pretending to, and with that, the energy shifts. Some women stand, others remain seated, signalling they're too important or too secure to chase attention. One gestures for water, another adjusts her veil. Nothing dramatic, just enough to be seen doing something, anything. The king disappears, and instantly the harem returns to a simmer. Whispers bloom like wildflowers. Someone chuckles softly, someone else sighs and rises, her feet barely touching the tiles. The war of mourning is over, for now. You wander into the courtyard just as the sun begins to stretch across the flagstones. It's not the blinding blaze of midday yet, but that soft golden hour where shadows are long and everything feels touched by amber. A tray of food rests on a nearby stool, figs sliced into stars, pomegranate seeds glistening like rubies, and a small clay cup filled with something rich and red. Wine. Yes, but not just any wine. This one has been stirred 13 times with a silver stick. Why? Because Venus is rising. No, really. A eunuch nearby mutters that the queen is on a Venus fast. No salted fish, no garlic, only cool fruits and blushing wine. Because the astrologers say Venus is in a favourable house this week, and beauty starts in the belly. That's the belief. Anyway, a few feet away, a woman picks at a sliver of melon while flipping through a palm leaf fan marked with tiny ink stars. It's not a decorative fan, it's her natal chart, customized, inked by hand, and updated weekly. Historians still debate whether these charts were taken seriously, or just an elaborate excuse to eat fewer carbs when Saturn looked grumpy. Either way, everyone here follows them. You take a seat near the courtyard wall, where the heat hasn't quite reached. 2 attendants arrive carrying trays of strange little cakes, black sesame, pistachio, and one dusted with dried rose petals and cardamom. Each cake has a shape, corresponding to a celestial body, a crescent for the moon, a triangle for Mars, a spiral for Mercury. No one eats the Mars one today. Apparently, Mars in retrograde gives you pimples. One of the women waves you over. She's lounging beneath a pomegranate tree, the branches heavy with fruit. "We're only eating the seeds today," she says, plucking a few and dropping them into a shallow dish. "The skins hold anger," you nod solemnly. The logic is, admittedly, poetic. A palace priest emerges from the colonnade, his robes rustling like dry leaves. He's old and sun-withered, with gold-tipped fingernails and eyes that always look like they're seeing something you're not. He carries a scroll and without a word begins to read. "Today," he announces, "is a day of softness. That means no lentils, no onions, no touching one's own feet." Why? Because softness, once disrupted, doesn't return until Jupiter enters Leo, obviously. The women murmur approvingly. One immediately puts down her bread. Another sniffs her perfume vial, double-checking that it's laced with cool notes. You watch as someone sprinkles dried mint over her meal, whispering a line from a love poem. Here, eating is not survival. It's celestial choreography. A debate breaks out over whether dried apricots count as neutral or warm. One girl insists they're warm, citing a nosebleed she got after eating too many. Another counters that she's only saying that because she's a Pisces. Things escalate quickly. A eunuch steps in, politely reminding everyone that today is meant to honour Venus, not Mercury's chaos. Meanwhile, another woman sits silently beside a stone basin filled with water. Floating on the surface is a single lotus flower and a few fragments of crushed pearl. She stirs it gently with a reed. For reflection, she murmurs, whether she means the water or her own, you're not sure. You overhear 2 attendants discussing which foods are forbidden under different moon phases. No sesame during a waxing moon, no honey when the moon is dark. One of them swears her cousin's hair started falling out after eating honey during a full moon in Taurus. The other gasps and immediately hides her sweet cakes under a linen napkin. It all sounds ridiculous, until you realize that every woman here has flawless skin, calm eyes, and a glow that no modern filter could replicate. Maybe it's the wine, maybe it's the moon, maybe it's that no one here eats garlic. A quiet bell rings in the distance. It signals the beginning of the shadow meal, the second breakfast of the day, served not in sunlight but under carefully curated shade. This meal is designed to align with the cooler humours, to counteract the emotional heat stirred up by palace life. Dishes are served on blue plates. Drinks are poured from silver jugs kept in a cold cellar carved into the earth. You watch as they pour a drink the colour of dusk. It's made from plums and smoked dates, stirred with a cinnamon stick and passed from hand to hand with reverence. This one calms Mercury. Someone explains, and makes you less sarcastic. You don't believe it. But then again, no one's laughed all morning. You begin to notice how everything, every sip, every nibble, every pause is a negotiation between body and sky. Here, food is prophecy. Meals are messages. Appetite is a language learned from the stars. Another woman, older and elegant in a robe the colour of storm clouds, closes her eyes and raises her hands. A soft chant escapes her lips. The words are unintelligible, but the tone is rich and honey slow. She's sinking her blood to the moon. A servant whispers, She wants her next cycle to fall during Venus's peak. You don't ask what that means. You just nod and file it under things I'll pretend to understand. In a quieter alcove, you find a small wall carving of the goddess Ishtar, flanked by bowls of herbs and slices of cucumber arranged in spiral patterns. Someone has placed a fig at her feet. It's been cut into 4 parts, one for each phase of the moon. An offering for beauty, or maybe fertility, or maybe just good lighting. The sun finally rises above the palace walls. A warm breeze kicks up. The pomegranate leaves rustle like whispers. One woman lifts her chin, closes her eyes, and lets the light touch her face. "Blessed be the angle," she murmurs. And in that moment, you get it. This isn't just superstition, it's control. A way to shape the chaos of life with rituals that make sense, even if they don't. Because when the stars tell you what to eat, how to rest, and when to pluck your eyebrows, at least someone's in charge, even if it's just Venus. As the last of the pomegranate seeds are cleared away, the palace shifts again, like a great organism changing posture. The chatter dims, the trays vanish, and the floor is swept so thoroughly it looks like no one's ever touched it. You're ushered, quietly, toward a side chamber glowing with filtered sunlight. Inside, an astrologer is bent over a chart so complex it looks like someone spilled constellations onto a scroll. She glances up, one brow arched. It's almost time for the plucking. You blink, unsure whether she means fruit or something more sinister. But she gestures toward a line of women reclining along a cushioned bench, faces tilted, neck stretched, brows furrowed in practiced patience. Ah, eyebrows. You settle into the back of the chamber and observe. Each woman clutches a small amulet, some shaped like stars, others like crescent moons. A few whisper invocations under their breath. One even crosses her eyes in concentration. Why the solemnity? Because according to the temple astrologers, today Saturn is transitioning across a specific line in the heavens. And Saturn is, allegedly, fussy about symmetry. A eunuch prepares the tools, bone tweezers, scented water, a salve of mint and beeswax. He nods to the astrologer. She consults her scroll, makes a note with a reed stylus, and declares, "Begin." The first woman winces as a hair is pulled. She exhales slowly. Another is plucked. A scribe records the exact time of the procedure. "We mark each one," she says, "in case the gods need a recount. This isn't just grooming. This is celestial surgery. The alignment must be perfect. A poorly timed pluck could cause misfortune, or at the very least, uneven brows. And you wouldn't want either in Babylon." You notice how the light is adjusted carefully during the ritual. A lattice panel is rotated ever so slightly, allowing a sliver of sunlight to strike each woman's brow from the same angle. If the shadow falls wrong, one attendant murmurs, the arch may displease Ishtar. Historians are still divided over whether these elaborate timing methods were taken seriously, or if they were exaggerated later in myth. Some ancient records imply it was simply about copying royal trends. Others hint at full astrological calendars guiding everything from haircut length to how much sandalwood oil was applied on certain days. What is certain is that this palace took it seriously. As the plucking continues, one woman begins to hum a low, rhythmic tune. It's meant to relax the muscles in her forehead, they say. Tension causes twitching. Twitching causes mistakes. Mistakes. Well, they have consequences. Another woman in line applies a cooling cloth to her temples. The cloth is soaked in chamomile and goat's milk and rumoured to soothe not only the skin but also the arguing planets inside her. She explains this casually. like she's describing a sunburn. You walk to a corner where a small bronze box rests on a cushion. Inside are replacement tweezers, each wrapped in embroidered cloth. One pair is adorned with a red ribbon for use when Mars is watching. The astrologer frowns at the mention. Mars is always watching, she mutters, and makes a quick protective sign in the air. The next woman lies back with exaggerated grace. Her brows are arched like temples already, but she's here for maintenance. The king noticed me last week, she says, and I'd rather not tempt regression. You don't ask whether the regression is astrological or romantic. An older woman enters the room and everyone straightens. She's not here for plucking. She's here to observe, maybe judge. Her hair is wrapped in gold thread, and her wrists jingle with quiet authority. She's a former consort, long retired but still revered. It's said her brow shape was once copied by half the court and led to a 2-year shortage of myrrh oil, because everyone thought it would help them look more like her. She glances at each woman in turn, offers no expression, and settles into a chair. "Continue," she says softly. The air tightens like a bowstring. The astrologer clears her throat. "Now we time the peak," she says. Apparently, there's an exact moment when Venus's energy aligns with the temple's eastern-facing wall. That's when the final strokes must occur. Everyone leans in slightly. A bell chimes. The final plucks are made. You expect applause. There is none. Instead, each woman is handed a small mirror, a polished disc of obsidian. They check, not for vanity, but for omen. Smooth arches, no bleeding, no twitching. That means the stars are pleased. One woman sighs with visible relief. Another mutters thanks to her amulet. One holds her breath, checks again, then quietly leaves the room. No one stops her. Perhaps her angles weren't divine enough today. You follow the group into an adjacent room filled with steam and perfume. A settling ritual begins. Each freshly plucked brow is dabbed with lavender water, followed by a brush of crushed pearl powder and a whispered blessing. To invite softness, to repel envy, to hold the gaze of kings. A few fringe tablets found in palace ruins suggest that women once competed to see whose brows drew the most attention during royal feasts. One tablet even describes a coded language communicated by brow flicks. Another possibility, the palace was just very, very bored. Regardless, the ritual ends with a collective exhale. The astrologer makes one last note on her chart, drawing a curving line in blue ink that resembles an eye. "Balanced," she says. For now, you step back outside, blinking against the growing sun. The air feels hotter now, but lighter somehow, like something's been aligned or released. You touch your own brow instinctively. No one's plucked you, but the energy lingers, and you think, maybe it's not about beauty at all. Maybe it never was. Maybe this is just how power survives with rituals sharp enough to draw blood and quiet enough to pass as poetry. You find yourself drawn toward the inner sleeping chambers again, not because you're tired, but because something's off. The air feels denser, heavier. There's a smell you can't place, sweet but spoiled, like perfume gone sour, and on the breeze, carried between layers of linen and crushed flower petals, comes a whisper that sends a chill down your spine. Someone found a charm under the queen's pillow. You step softly, weaving between marble columns and painted doors until you reach a dim room humming with tension. A group of women stand in a tight circle around a silk mattress. One holds up a tiny object between two fingertips, an unbaked clay doll. No longer than your thumb, Its head is crudely shaped, its arms little more than stubs, but there's something unsettling in its expression. Or maybe in the fact that it has an expression at all. A thread is tied around its neck, another around its ankles. Symbols are scratched onto its belly, faint but deliberate. You glance around. No one's speaking, which, in a room like this, is its own kind of screaming. Hex or blessing, someone finally whispers. No one answers. Historians still argue about the meaning of these little figures. Some believe they were protective charms placed to shield women during sleep. Others insist they were curses, slipped under bedding or into bathing pools to sour the skin, the womb, or the mind. There's even a third theory that these dolls were messages codes passed between rivals, cloaked in ritual but soaked in politics. Whatever the case, this one shouldn't be here. A servant rushes to fetch the palace priestess. Another begins chanting softly, a prayer to Gula, goddess of healing. The room fills with the scent of burnt myrrh, and someone draws a protective circle in ash on the floor, tracing its edge with a goose feather. You notice that no one touches the doll again. Instead, an older attendant places it gently in a dish of milk. The milk curdles almost instantly. A sharp intake of breath moves through the room. That means it's angry. One woman mutters, "Or it's spoiled milk." But again, you don't say anything. The priestess arrives in silence. Her robes are simple, but her presence is not. She kneels beside the bowl, closes her eyes, and hums a note so low it vibrates your ribs. Then she speaks. "This is not the first," she says. The room stills. 3 others were found this month, one under a sandalwood chest, one sewn into a gown, one inside a cushion. Who someone asks. No names. The priestess replies, "Not yet," but the hand is familiar. She doesn't explain what that means. The doll is removed, wrapped in black cloth, and taken away. The room slowly exhales, but nothing feels lighter. Not really. You step out into the hallway, where gossip travels faster than sandals on stone. A pair of younger women leaning close, murmuring theories it was jealousy. It was a mid-tier concubine trying to move up. It was revenge from a former favourite cast out too quickly. You hear one say, "They always use the dolls when words stop working." Another theory suggests that certain fragrances, when worn at night, can attract curses or protect against them. One woman dabs her wrists with bitter orange oil and mutters, "Try me." You trail behind them as they head into the protection chamber. Yes, that's real. A full room dedicated to undoing bad energy. It's circular, lined with lapis tiles that shimmer faintly in the lamplight. In the centre is a low table covered in objects' cracked eggshells, braided cords, burned herbs, tiny scrolls tied with human hair. Each has a purpose, or at least a story. One priestess begins mixing a paste made of charcoal, honey, and ash from a fire that never goes out. She calls it night balm, and applies it to the temples of a particularly pale-faced concubine who hasn't slept since the doll was found. Nearby, another is preparing a protection necklace, a thread of dried figs, blue beads, and a single ivory tooth rumoured to be from a lion cub born during an eclipse. Probably not true, but it's beautiful, and that seems to count for something here. You watch as one woman dips a slice of bread into oil and presses it to her cheek, whispering something you don't catch. She leaves it there for a moment, then eats it in 3 bites. "Absorbs the poison," she says, wiping her fingers. "If there is poison," someone else lays a hand on her chest and says, "if it doesn't burn, you're safe." The room smells like mint, panic and dust. You notice a wall carving Ishtar again, standing with wings outstretched, her feet on two lions. Around her are symbols that you're told are anti-jealousy markings. A priestess explains that Ishtar guards beauty, but also punishes vanity, which is a confusing double standard when you live in a place where your rank depends on whether your eyeliner was symmetrical during a moon feast. Another woman begins applying crushed garnet paste under her eyes. To reflect ill will, she says. The red streaks make her look like she's weeping blood. But she smiles and says she feels much better. A bell rings softly again. Always the bell. It means the queen has been informed. She's calm, they say, not surprised, and that says everything. Back in the corridor, a trail of salt is being poured along the thresholds of important rooms. You step over it, just in case. Someone makes a joke about the kitchen girls needing to borrow the salt for actual food. No one laughs. Later that evening, you hear singing. Not loud or celebratory, but soft and strange. It comes from the room where the doll was found. A lullaby, maybe. Or an incantation. You pause at the door, listening to the quiet harmony of women trying to sleep in a place where safety is always half imagined, where curses hide under pillows and protection is just one cracked doll away from collapse. And you wonder, was the doll real? Was the curse effective, or is belief alone enough to bruise the skin? The next morning, the air is different, not heavier, not exactly, but sharper, like the palace is holding its breath. As you move through the garden corridors, the usual perfume of sandalwood and rose is tinged with smoke. Somewhere nearby, incense is burning in great coils. You follow the haze, and it leads you to the bathhouse again, only now. Instead of milk, the water is steaming with flower-infused oils, and in the middle of this gentle chaos hair, everywhere, braided, coiled, brushed, dyed. In the palace of Babylon, a woman's hair isn't just part of her body. It's a statement, a narrative, sometimes even a weapon. You watch as a young woman, barely more than a girl, sits cross-legged while 3 attendants detangle her thick black waves. One uses a honeyed oil to smooth the strands. Another combs gently with a tool carved from bone. A third simply hums, like the melody keeps the knots away. But it's not just about looking beautiful. In Babylon, hair could be political. There were rumours, of course. One queen supposedly wore her hair in a style mimicking Ishtar's lions, with braids curled forward like paws and adorned with small golden claws. Another allegedly refused to cut a single strand during her entire reign, and when she died, her hair was said to weigh more than her jewels. That one might be exaggerated, but the symbolism isn't. You pass another alcove where 2 women sit on a bench, heads bent together. One is weaving something into the other's braid tiny beads made from lapis lazuli, threaded so precisely it looks like the stars of a constellation. A map, she explained softly, of the night her son was born. The braid itself tells a story, and you're reminded again that in Babylon, beauty never exists for its own sake. It's always layered with meaning. A servant walks past carrying a bowl of hair dye. The scent is sharp henna, indigo, maybe crushed fig leaves. Today is a colour day, when women choose to adjust the shade of their strands to better align with seasonal changes. Autumn colours mean copper, rust, deep brown. Summer favours black with hints of violet, winter ash and silver. Of course. To remind the sun we're not afraid, a stylist says with a smile. But colour isn't the only form of haircraft on display. Another woman's locks are gathered into a towering style shaped like a flame-coiled, pinned, sprayed with oil to keep its structure. It's a declaration, a dare, the kind of hair you wear when you expect to be seen. She walks with the caution of someone who knows one wrong breeze could topple an entire afternoon's work. In a quieter room, an older noblewoman brushes her hair herself, slowly, deliberately. "There are things only your own hands should know," she says, eyes not meeting yours, especially after you've survived enough mornings. Behind her, a servant arranges pins and combs in rows as if preparing for battle. Some are carved from ivory, others tipped with gold or capped in quartz. One has a tiny hollow compartment. You ask what it's for. "Messages," she says, like it's obvious. Historians remain puzzled over the role of these hair accessories. Some believe they were used in clandestine communication, passing notes or scents or even coded gestures through the harem. Others argue they were simply decorative, but when a palace scribe was once caught with a lock of someone else's braid tucked into his robes and disappeared the next day, the theory of espionage by hairstyle gained traction. You walk past a washing station where hair is rinsed with rosewater steeped in moonstone. The attendant swears it strengthens strands against jealousy. "Envy is acidic," she says with great seriousness. "You feel it first in the scalp." One woman applies a paste to her scalp made of crushed mint, egg yolk, and almond. It smells bracing. It cools the blood, she explains. "My dreams were too loud last night." Another quietly snips a small portion of her braid and tosses it into a flame, watching it burn with a solemn gaze. "To remove memory," she says. "Just the wrong ones." There's an entire corner of the bathhouse where hair rituals for grief take place. Here, locks are unbraided, soaked in oil, then buried in small linen bundles under potted fig trees. The belief is that the tree will transform the sorrow. Hair remembers. Someone tells you. Too much. Sometimes elsewhere. Someone whispers that the king once fell in love not with a face or a voice, but with the way a woman's hair unfurled when she knelt to pray. A detail so small it escaped everyone except him. And her, and the 5 concubines who started copying the style immediately. You begin to understand that hair in this palace is a language, an alphabet, a form of power. One woman braids ribbons into her hair red for courage, blue for dreams, silver for silence. She doesn't speak, but her head tells a whole poem. Another woman tucks a tiny bell into the base of her bun. When she walks, it chimes so faintly you wonder if you imagined it. "To remind him I'm coming," she says. And of course, there are the scroll's tiny tablets etched with stylings reserved for festivals, mourning, or triumph. Some are religious, some political, some petty. A whole shelf in the palace archives is allegedly devoted to hairstyles used during exile and subsequent revenge. As the afternoon light shifts, the hair rituals draw to a close. Pins are set, oils absorbed, heads wrapped gently in linen to hold the work in place. A woman steps out into the corridor, her braid bouncing like punctuation. Another lifts her chin, curls in place, daring the world to misunderstand her. You stand at the doorway, watching the cascade of hair and meaning and myth walk past, and you think perhaps here, beauty isn't about drawing attention at all. Maybe it's about speaking without ever opening your mouth. The sun begins to dip low, staining the palace walls with molten gold as you follow the echo of laughter down a painted corridor. You're not sure where it's coming from, but it doesn't sound entirely human. There's a strangeness to it, like it's been doused in wine and rose water. You turn a corner, and the scent hits you like a velvet curtain jasmine, sandalwood, crushed mint, and something else, something heady. You enter the Queen's private salon. Here, the atmosphere is thick, not with tension, but with indulgence. Pillows the size of boats are scattered across the mosaic floor. Cups of wine rest in half-tilted bowls, and reclining in the centre, as if she were sculpted directly from luxury itself, is a woman humming softly while her attendant massages oil into her back. 5 times a day, the attendant tells you, as though this is the most normal thing in the world. The Queen must be oiled 5 times. Each oil is different. Each time of day demands its own scent. You blink. That's a lot of oil. The first, at dawn, is myrtle and mint, to wake the blood. The second, sandalwood and almond, is applied mid-morning to quiet the bones. Then jasmine and honey, then rose and frankincense, and finally, before sleep, a blend said to mimic the smell of heaven. No one knows what's in it, the girl whispers. It came from a temple on a mountain, or a caravan from beyond the sands. Depends who you ask. You glance again at the Queen. Her skin seems to glow, not like light, but like warmth, given shape. One woman nearby sighs and mutters. She doesn't sweat. I've never seen her sweat. There's a legend that swirls around the palace like steam in the baths, that the Queen's very pores emit rose oil, that she bleeds perfume, that her body, so saturated with sacred substances, has transcended the need for ordinary biology. It's ridiculous, obviously, probably. But then, a scribe once wrote that the Queen passed by and the garden blossomed. Another account says that birds change their songs in her presence. Historians roll their eyes, of course, but even they admit that the Queen's signature scent, something between myrrh and longing, lingers longer than should be possible. In a small dish beside the bed lies a piece of cloth soaked in her morning oil. It's kept there not for her, but for the room itself, so it knows who rules it. An attendant says, "You're not sure whether she's joking." You notice that the oils are not kept in bottles, but in jars shaped like animals, each one associated with a different mood: a lion for courage, a dove for softness, a fox for wit, a peacock, naturally, for charm. The fox jar is nearly empty. Make of that what you will. Further along the wall, 2 servants polish the Queen's back with flat stones. Warm, smooth, coated in camphor paste. It pushes the scent deeper, they explain, so it lasts. The ritual takes half an hour. Then she is turned, delicately, and the same begins on her chest and arms. A eunuch appears with a scroll. It's today's compliment log. Yes, you heard that right. Every kind thing said to the Queen is written down, phrases collected from dinner, court sessions, even overheard whispers. They're read aloud to her during her oiling. She listens. She smiles faintly and never once speaks. One compliment, however, makes her open her eyes. A visiting envoy said her scent softened his memory of war. She laughs, not cruelly, just knowingly, and then closes her eyes again. In another corner, 2 concubines are arguing softly, of course, about which oil is most authentic. One swears by crushed lotus seed, the other insists on green myrrh. But green myrrh is bitter, the first counters, and bitterness makes the skin frown. You begin to understand that these aren't just indulgences, they're armour. Perfume in Babylon is power distilled, bottled, massaged into muscle and memory. A young girl walks by carrying a new blend. She's careful not to spill even a drop. It's not just expensive, it's sacred. This one's mixed during eclipses only, she explains. It's for when the Queen wants to be remembered for something. You wonder how many layers of scent she wears at once. The answer is never revealed. Some say it's 7, others say it changes daily, depending on what dream she had the night before. Someone claims the Queen once dreamt of figs and cedar, and by midday, every woman in the palace was wearing fig oil. Even the dogs. You watch as another oil is poured into a small basin and lit. The flame flickers with blue-green edges. It awakens the air, the attendant says, so it listens. Another adds, and carries her name where it needs to go. You leave the room light-headed, unsure whether it's the heady mix of scents or the slow unravelling of reality. And as you walk the hallway, the scent still clings, subtle, invisible, but persistent. You pass a scribe who sniffs once and murmurs, "Ah." You are near her. You nod. He smiles wistfully. Then you'll remember today, even if you try not to. The scent of the Queen still lingers in your hair as you drift into the corridor lined with bronze mirrors, but it's not your own reflection you're watching. It's the women who pause here. One by one, they approach the polished surfaces not to admire themselves, but to communicate, quiet, carefully. The mirrors are more than mirrors. You notice the way one woman taps her finger twice on the edge before leaning in, as if the glass might whisper back. Another strokes her earring 3 times before adjusting her veil. You think nothing of it until a third woman, farther down the hall, does the exact same gesture and then leaves in the opposite direction. You pause. Something's happening here. Something silent. Later, you overhear the word whisper skin. It's not a person. It's a hairpin. A long, thin needle of gold capped with a pearl and etched with fine lines so faint they almost vanish in light. These pins are not just decorative. They're signals. When slipped into a braid at a certain angle, they indicate a message: meet me. Beware. She saw. Each variation has meaning. The more complex the pin, the more layered the message. Some are so intricate that deciphering them requires a small code tablet hidden in an attendant's sash. One girl, no older than 15, wears 2 simple pins crossed in her hair. You learn this means waiting for a reply. A woman beside her wears none. That, apparently, means the opposite. I've said what I came to say. And so you begin to watch not the words, but the metal, the pins, the combs, the quiet conversations carried out with nothing but a glance and a twist of hair. A servant explains that the more discreet the message, the more dangerous it is. Words can be denied, she says, but pins never lie. Historians still argue whether this system was real or later romanticized. Some texts suggest palace women used a kind of fan language, while others mention colour-coded sashes or handkerchiefs. But the frequency of combs and pins in royal tombs, many marked with unusual notches or lines, suggests that something was being said, and that only certain women knew how to listen. You move toward the far end of the corridor, where the most prized pins are displayed. They rest in velvet-lined trays behind thin crystal, guarded by a eunuch who has memorized every piece. He knows which pin belonged to which queen, which whisper ended a scandal, which comb was found broken in the bath the morning a concubine vanished. He tells you softly that one pin plane, silver, a barely curved hook, once signalled the dismissal of a high priest's daughter. It was placed in the queen's braid, he says. She wore it only once, but everyone understood. There's a drawer beneath the display. Inside, dozens of pins rest in bundles. Many are duplicates mass-produced, copied by jealous eyes and clumsy hands. But among them are a few originals, believed to carry enchantments. One is said to heat when touched by betrayal. Another leaves a faint scent of fig if someone nearby is lying. You smile. Surely that's just a tale. Until one of the women brushing past you pauses, adjusts her braid, and subtly shifts a pin to the left. A woman across the corridor responds without looking up. She brushes a comb through her hair and then tucks it back into her sash upside down. Nothing is spoken. Everything is said. You begin to wonder how many secrets have passed between these walls without a single syllable. It makes sense. You realize, in a world where speaking openly could cost you status, or worse, language must evolve. And so it becomes silent, symbolic, strung into jewellery and twisted into curls. In a side room, 2 girls are being trained in the language of pins. A matron stands before them with a wooden head, its hair styled into dozens of elaborate forms. "This one means apology," she says, pointing to a pair of pins tucked close to the ear, "but only if worn at dawn." The girls nod. She continues. "This one." She indicates a pin set high on the crown. "Danger," one girl whispers, "but hidden from above." "Good," the matron says. "And this A pause?" Then the younger girl replies, "Waiting, but hopeful." The matron smiles. "Close enough." You sit with the lesson a while. The matron allows it. Few outsiders are permitted here. But you don't feel like an outsider anymore. You've been breathed on by the queen, watched the brows be plucked, witnessed the bath of oils. Perhaps now you belong to the palace, just a little. As the sun begins to lower into a golden haze, you step back into the corridor and see the light catching on a woman's pins. They flicker like fireflies. You glance at their placement, 2 crossed, 1 vertical, 1 hidden behind the ear. You recognize the message. "I see you. I am waiting. Do not speak." You nod to her, say nothing, and keep walking. And you realize, in Babylon, sometimes the most dangerous things are not shouted but worn. As dusk settles over the palace and the shadows stretch long like silken ribbons, you're led into a part of the compound that smells slightly sweeter. Not floral, not herbal, richer, fuller. It's the scent of milk, but not from the bathhouses. This is sharper, more specific. You're entering the palace's most curious wing, the milk chambers. And yes, they're exactly what they sound like. You step into a cool, domed room where rows of clay amphorae line the walls. Each is carefully sealed, labelled, and marked with the name of a nursemaid. These aren't just storage vessels. They're status symbols. In this world, breast milk isn't just nourishment. It's currency, reputation, a quiet ladder to influence. You hear soft laughter echo from a nearby chamber and follow it to a sunken room where a group of women sit in low semicircles, each holding a child at her breast. Some are noble-born, but most are nursemaids carefully selected, well-fed, closely watched. Their milk is considered the finest in the land. An attendant explains the queen's own nursemaid eats only pomegranate, barley, and almonds. Nothing sour, nothing salted. Every bite must be sweet, so the milk carries harmony. You blink. You weren't aware harmony had a flavour. Another nursemaid raises her chin slightly when you pass. She has the look of someone who knows she's important, because she is. Her milk has been used in beauty rituals, sacred baths, even mixed into ceremonial ink for blessing scrolls. She may not wear silk or gold, but she carries power in her bones. Power that seeps from her body into cups and bowls and royal skin. Historians still debate the organisation of this milk economy. Some believe there was an entire rank system among nursemaids, based on the age of their infants, their health, even the moon phase of their child's birth. Others think that's embellishment layered on later by poets and palace memorists. Either way, it's clear that in this palace, your worth can literally be measured by the fluid you produce. You're shown a chamber with hanging scales used to weigh amphorae. Not for rationing, no one here goes without, but for status. The fuller the jar, the greater the praise. Some women leave messages in chalk beside their contributions. Blessed on the first moon, fed before sleep, dreamless child. As if purity or serenity could be infused in liquid form. One amphora bears a crescent-shaped seal. That one's reserved, the servant tells you. It's blended with rosewater and gold thread, used only for the queen's full-body soaks on moonless nights. You stare at it. The milk inside has a faint shimmer, as though it's carrying light it hasn't yet released. But not all milk is destined for bathing. You're taken to the preparation room cooler, darker. Here, the milk is filtered through linen and occasionally blended with herbs. Chamomile to calm, mint for clarity, poppy for other purposes. One small cup is being prepared for a concubine who's been having bad dreams. It's said this particular mixture, drunk before sunset, will cool her inner fire. A priestess oversees the mixing, murmuring over the bowl in a voice that's neither prayer nor song, just a rhythm. You ask what she's saying. She smiles faintly and replies, just telling the milk where it's going. You don't know if she's serious. Next to her, a small group of noblewomen sit sipping from delicate bowls. Not wine, milk, flavoured gently with cinnamon and sweetened with dates. It's part of a ritual, the dusk softening. They believe it balances the skin and the spirit. And honestly, they all look radiant, so who are you to question it? One woman confesses that she commissions milk from a specific nursemaid whose child never cries. Calm transfers. She insists. The body remembers. Another claims her blend includes the milk of two women twins, born under an eclipse. She calls it mirror milk. She winks. Very rare. Of course, it's not all harmony and herbal infusions. A rumour passes like silk in the wind someone bribed a wet nurse to mix in sour milk. A rival's face began to break out in patches days later. Coincidence. The women here don't believe in coincidence. An attendant shows you a locked cabinet where blessed blends are kept. These are infused with sacred herbs and stirred by priestesses during specific lunar alignments. They're not for drinking. These are used during rituals to invoke youth, protection, and the favour of celestial forces. You're warned not to touch them. Even glancing too long, someone says, can affect your dreams. You believe it. In the corner of the room stands an elderly woman with a scroll. She's the milk record keeper. Every drop is noted where it came from, where it went, what it was used for. She can tell you which concubine received which blend the night of the last eclipse. She can tell you which amphora was spilled and what day the stars warned it would happen. One line on her scroll reads, Amphora Sh42, knocked over during envy. You're not sure whether that means it was knocked over by an envious hand, or the milk itself was affected by emotion. Either interpretation feels possible. You step into a final chamber silent, blue-lit, and warm. Here, nursemaids rest. They lie on wide beds with their infants, tended by servants who feed them, fan them, keep them calm. They're only tasked to nourish, to stay serene, to produce beauty in liquid form. It's quiet, peaceful, sacred, even, and a little terrifying. Because in this world, the body is not just flesh, it's an offering, a factory, a tool for power dressed up in softness. You leave the milk chambers humbled, confused, and scented faintly of chamomile. And as the door closes behind you, you think in Babylon, even kindness has a recipe. You step out of the milk chambers into the deeper hush of evening. The palace has shifted again, cooler now, quieter. Shadows stretch long across the flagstones, and the soft slap of sandals seems suddenly louder. But just when you think the palace is winding down, you hear it laughter, not the bright, trilling kind. No, this is sharp, polished, carefully controlled. You turn the corner and find a group of women seated near a small indoor fountain. Their bodies relaxed, but their eyes alert. Something has just happened, or is about to. A servant lingers awkwardly nearby, clearing away a tray of uneaten dried figs. Someone remarks, too casually, she didn't even touch them. What a shame. That was the blend made for the moon's 5th house. Another woman chuckles under her breath. Well, maybe her skin will finally betray her. That's when you realize what this is, a gossip circle, but in Babylonian terms, it's more like a tribunal, the target a woman not present. Always. Her crime wrinkles. You lean back into the shadows and listen. Apparently, during the morning procession, a noblewoman once widely admired for her radiant skin was seen in full daylight, and someone noticed lines. Not deep ones. Not etched. Just beginnings. She's been skipping the eye cream made from pounded snail shell, one says, sipping from a copper cup, or she's sleeping face down again. Even the queen avoids that. A handmaid nods solemnly. I heard her milk soak was interrupted. Twice. The room reacts as though a bell of doom has rung. Because here, skin isn't just skin. It's prophecy. And a wrinkle isn't just aging, it's a message. A public declaration that something celestial, emotional, or political is off. There's even a rumour that certain priests are trained to read wrinkles like lines in a clay tablet. You can almost hear the scholarly debates with these readings metaphorical. Practical entire essays argue whether forehead creases were interpreted as divine warnings or simply signs of poor dietary alignment with Venus. But in the palace, one thing is certain. No flaw goes unnoticed. One girl pipes up nervously. I thought she looked lovely today. The circle turns to her like cats spotting a weak bird. Lovely, one woman says, as though tasting the word. Lovely is what they say before exile. You glance around. This entire space, every fountain, every polished surface, every oil-drenched cushion is designed to soothe the body, but sharpen the eyes. Beauty is comfort, yes, but it's also surveillance. A woman in the corner applies a balm to her forehead. Just in case, she murmurs. The balm, you're told, is made from almond oil, powdered pearl, and the crushed husks of figs picked during the Queen's coronation week. Why that matters, no one agrees, but the ritual is strict. Apply upward, never down. Rub in slow circles, end with a whispered compliment to yourself. You pass a stone shelf lined with bowls labelled regret balm, envy paste, and last chance dew, all metaphorical names, you assume. Probably. Maybe. One bowl contains a thick grey cream described as for reversing spoken bitterness. The instructions say to apply before sunset, then remain silent until moonrise. A woman nearby sits with her lips tightly closed, eyes downcast. It's working. Or maybe she's just terrified to speak. Another treatment is being applied to a woman's cheeks, a thin smear of paste mixed with saffron and powdered oyster shell. To soften rage, the attendant explains. Especially the hidden kind. You wonder how many women in this palace have hidden rage. You're shown to a side alcove where the mirror guardians sit. Their job, to polish the bronze mirrors and, occasionally, adjust their tilt depending on the room's politics. You ask what that means. Well, one woman whispers, we try not to let the light fall too harshly on those out of favour. And if someone's rising, you ask. She smiles. Then we angle the truth just slightly. You step back, glancing at your own reflection, warped slightly, glowing too brightly on one side. You didn't even notice the adjustment, which, of course, is the point. By now, the sun is gone, the candles are lit, and the gossip grows bolder. She claimed her lips were naturally that colour, someone says with a theatrical sigh, as if we haven't seen the pomegranate paste under her pillow. They move on to another woman whose laughter's grown too loud lately. It's forced, someone says, like someone who knows she's slipping. One woman simply mutters, the skin tells, it always does, and it does. Skin in Babylon is as scrutinized as any scroll. Every blemish has meaning, every glow a purpose. A single freckle in the wrong place, a sign of disfavour from the goddess Gula. A dry patch near the temple, overthinking. Redness at the throat, ambition left unsatisfied. A few fringe scholars suggest the palace may have employed skin readers, full-time individuals who interpreted complex patterns of texture and tone like auguries. Most historians dismiss this. But the palace records contain odd entries like Zamira spotted left cheek on the morning of the red moon, avoided main court for 5 days. So, who knows as the night deepens? One of the older women pulls out a jar of balm and dabs it along her jawline. This one, she says, is from a recipe so old even the priests forgot how it works. But it smells like patience, and somehow that feels true. You lean back, letting the candlelight dance across your arms. The room hums with stories, some cruel, some ridiculous, some whispered with genuine concern. It's easy to get caught up in the spiral. But then, a young woman speaks quietly. I think she looked tired, not ugly, just tired. And for a moment, no one says anything. That single, forbidden truth that even queens can be tired hangs in the air like the scent of crushed violet. Then the laughter resumes, the critiques return, the balm is reapplied, because in Babylon, exhaustion is not allowed to show, especially not on your face. Night has settled completely now, casting the palace in shadows thick enough to touch. Oil lamps flicker along the corridors, their light pooled in golden puddles on the floor. You follow the gentle scent of burnt myrrh into one of the smaller preparation rooms, a space neither entirely sacred nor entirely secular. Here, the lines between charm and superstition dissolve completely. A woman sits cross-legged before a low table, gently grinding something between 2 pieces of polished stone. She doesn't look up as you enter. Her voice is soft, but firm. Don't breathe too loudly. This one's for the eyes. You inch closer. On the table lies a small bowl of dark, powdered deep charcoal in colour, with the faintest glimmer of green and blue. Coal, she explains, for protection and seduction, but mostly for seeing. You blink. Seeing. She dips a slender finger into the powder and traces a line beneath her lower lid. Eyes tell too much, she says. This keeps them from giving everything away. You watch as other women enter one by one. Each brings her own small container, some carved from bone, others from shell. They offer spices, oils, even thin strips of cloth to trade for a pinch of this special coal. One offers honey laced with thyme. Another produces a tiny feather said to have come from a phoenix, or at least from a bird that flew in from Persia and screamed once before dying. Everything has value, especially when it can be traced back to myth. Once the coal is applied, the ritual begins, a prayer, but not to any single god. This one is addressed to the unseen, a concept more than a deity. They whisper, "May what I see be mine. May what sees me be kind." Historians argue endlessly over these cosmetic rituals. Some claim the eyeliner was purely practical, meant to shield the eyes from the sun and infections. Others insist it was a form of glamour magic, drawing the attention of men or warding off rivals. Most likely, it was both. You move to another alcove where small bowls of crushed pigment are being mixed. Some are added to oils, others to beeswax. For lashes, someone says, and brows, and breath. That last one makes you pause, but sure enough, a woman is dabbing the mixture onto her lips and inhaling through her nose. It's how the spell settles, she adds. There's a tale of a concubine who used too much coal during a solar eclipse. It's said her eyes gleamed so darkly that the king mistook her for a demoness in disguise. He fled. She was exiled. And yet, her coal recipe is still passed around, whispered in corners and applied during moments of crisis. One older woman stirs a pot over a low flame. The smell is peculiar, earthy, sharp. She calls it eyeliner ink, not for writing, for drawing tiny protection sigils along the inner edge of the lid. Only for those strong enough not to blink, she warns. Another woman prepares peacock feather brushes, slender tools dipped in oil before applying the powder in delicate sweeps. 3 strokes per eye, she murmurs. No more, no less. That's the balance. You notice the tools themselves carry meaning. One brush is tipped with ivory, another with onyx. The ivory brings clarity, the onyx concealment. One woman uses both one eye for honesty, one for mystery. You find yourself wondering how many conversations you've had today with people wearing masks not of cloth, but of pigment. On a nearby shelf, tiny scrolls are stored alongside vials. You ask what they are. The woman beside you unrolls one carefully. It's filled with symbols, tiny patterns meant to be drawn in coal, one beneath each eye, depending on intent. This one brings forgiveness, she says, pointing to a spiral. This one, memory. And this one, she hesitates, tracing a forked symbol, makes others forget. You don't ask what she used that one for. There's another legend whispered now, the kind only shared once the lamps are low, a woman who charmed the entire court into thinking she was beautiful, though she was not, her secret. She wore a spell of such subtlety, inked into her eyeliner, that no one saw her true face, even the mirror turned shy. It's dismissed by scholars as nonsense, but still, the idea sticks. As the night deepens, the mood shifts, the laughter fades, the room grows still. Each woman now stares into her mirror, drawing the final lines, not for beauty, for armour. One draws a dot beneath each eye. To anchor my tears, she says. Another adds a winged line that sweeps toward her temple. so I see more than they want me to. You hear another whisper, barely audible, so I don't see myself too clearly. And suddenly you understand this isn't just makeup. It's a language for what can't be said aloud. Each line, each smudge, each shimmer of colour is a way to survive, to redirect attention, to define the self before someone else does. You pass a mirror and catch your reflection. You haven't touched a brush or a pot of powder, but still, you wonder what your eyes would say if outlined in Babylonian black. Would you see more, or would you hide better? Either way, the answer stays inside the coal. Later that night, when most of the palace has folded into silence, and even the fountains are whispering, you find yourself in the Queen's outer chamber once more, but this time she is not present. Instead, a handful of attendants move with slow grace around a single object, a mirror. Not just any mirror. This one is obsidian, polished to a shine so dark it seems to pull the light into itself. It sits on a pedestal carved from cedar wood, wrapped in linen at the base like something sacred or dangerous. No one speaks above a hush. And when they do, it's not about the Queen. It's about what the mirror shows. You approach carefully. An older attendant motions for you to stop. "Not yet," she says. It must be warmed. A brazier glows nearby, and incense smoke trails across the stone floor like thin fingers. One of the women lifts a tiny bowl and pours a drop of jasmine oil into the flame. The scent thickens. Another fans the mirror gently with a palm frond, as if trying to stir its reflection to life. Eventually, the lead attendant steps forward and uncovers it. The mirror hums with heat, like the air before a storm, and as you peer into it, you see yourself, but not exactly. There's something unfamiliar in the face staring back. Not younger, not older, just different, as if the mirror isn't showing your features, but the expression you'll wear tomorrow, or yesterday, or the one you've been hiding. They say this one shows your soul, the attendant says softly, but only if you don't blink. You do blink, immediately, and when you look again, the image has shifted, still you, but a little softer, a little blurred, and in the centre of your forehead, a faint shimmer. Nothing there, but something. The Queen uses this mirror each morning. You're told not to apply her face, but to settle her shape. That's the phrase they use. She studies herself until her expression matches the day ahead. Only then do the attendants bring the oils, the paints, the scents. It's said the mirror reflects not what you are, but what others will see. That's why it's kept separate from the bathing quarters. Too much use, and the soul begins to blur at the edges. You begin to believe your reflection more than your body. One of the eunuchs recounts a legend, a woman who stared into the obsidian too long and saw a stranger. She tried to match the face, the smile, the way the eyes moved. By the end of the month, no one recognized her, including herself. She became a ghost. They say, alive, but not anchored. Scholars debate whether the Queen's mirror was ever used for magic. Some argue it was merely a tool for discipline, a form of mindful reflection. Others claim it was enchanted by temple priests and gifted to a former ruler after a particularly accurate vision came true. No one agrees, but the rumours are vivid enough that no one ever stares too long. To the left of the mirror rests a box of tools. Combs, yes, and brushes, but also tiny metal styluses used to trace symbols on the skin. Not visible, at least not in ordinary light. You watch as one attendant dips a stylus into a vial of clear liquid, then gently draws a sigil across another woman's cheekbone. "What does it say?" you whisper. She smiles. It says, "Remember." Later, when the Queen is to appear for the moonlit ceremony, this will be activated by lamplight faint silver lettering that only those watching closely will notice. A message, a reminder, or a warning. The Queen, it said, has worn different messages on her face every full moon since her ascension. No one's ever deciphered all of them, but court poets write endlessly about the ones they think they've glimpsed. He does not see what he has lost. This is the price of silence. I was not born in shadow. You think of all the women in this palace who perform themselves each day, who learn to shape their voices, their scent, their posture, their brows, and now apparently their very reflections. The mirror is cooled now, draped again in its linen. The attendants move on to polishing the Queen's obsidian combs. One has broken and is being recarved. You watch the artisan etch tiny symbols into the handle. Not decoration. Not quite. These are wishes, or perhaps protection. They're pressed into the object so she doesn't have to say them aloud. A servant appears with a small clay tablet. It contains the Queen's chosen emotion for the night's serenity. The room shifts. The attendants begin laying out linen robes, pale grey with thread so fine it shimmers. No jewellery tonight, just a faint scent of cedar and a single stone ring set with moonstone. The look is deliberate, meant to say untouched, untouchable. The mirror will be used one last time before she appears in public. A final glance. Not to check for flaws, but to fix the face of the story she wants others to believe. And isn't that what all mirrors do in the end? You step back as the room grows still. One by one, the candles are lit. One by one, the women smooth their sleeves. The door opens, and down the corridor, the Queen begins to walk. You won't see the mirror again tonight, but the version of yourself it showed that will follow you for a while. You wake the next morning to the low, rhythmic sound of chanting soft and breathy, like a lullaby sung in reverse. It draws you toward the open courtyard at the edge of the palace, where the air is thick with the scent of milk, flowers, and something else. Something darker. The sun has only just begun to rise, and the light is the colour of apricots. Shadows still cling to the edges of the marble steps as you follow the sound to a hidden grove, partially enclosed by high stone walls. Here, vines curl along the archways, and the ground is covered with petals, some fresh, some wilted, all fragrant. In the centre, a circle of women sits around a shallow pool filled not with water, but with a thick mixture of milk, rose oil, and floating hibiscus blossoms. A priestess kneels at the edge, stirring slowly with a long wooden rod carved in the shape of a lioness's tail. Her chant continues, rhythmic, steady, humming like breath through stone. You've stumbled into something sacred, or secret, a ceremony, and not the kind they advertise in the painted hallways. You recognize a few of the faces' concubines, attendants, even a mid-tier noblewoman known for her skill with perfumes. But today, none of them speak. They've removed their veils, their oils, their jewellery, barefaced, barefoot. Each holds a flower, one by one. They step forward and drop the petals into the milk. Offerings, the priestess murmurs, still not looking up, to the hunger beneath. That's ominous. A servant approaches with a small clay dish containing a thin sliver of silver leaf and a bead of dried blood. You look away before asking. A moment later, it's gone, dissolved into the milk. There's a story here. You feel it pressing against the walls like steam. One of the women recites a line, what fades may return, what rots may bloom, what ages may beg to stay. And then another, to be seen forever is to be lost never. They're not just praying, they're bargaining. This is the side of beauty they don't write poems about. The part where desire touches fear, where glamour blurs into desperation. You can feel it in the way the women hold their breath when a black petal floats to the surface. No one speaks its meaning aloud, but the air tightens. Historians don't agree on the purpose of these rituals. Some argue they were acts of devotion, gifts to Ishtar or Gula, seeking favour or fertility. Others think they were private protection rites, performed by women tired of being looked at and judged. There's even a more fringe theory that claims these ceremonies were used to channel collective longing-turning beauty into a spell so powerful it could influence royal decisions. Whatever the case, you're watching something ancient, something rarely recorded, never explained. You shift to the edge of the grove and notice smaller bowls laid around the perimeter. Each contains something strange. A lock of hair, a charred comb, a shard of broken glass polished smooth. Sacrifices, one of the younger women whispers. Pieces of what we no longer want. Another woman pours a small vial into the milk, a cloudy liquid that smells faintly of bitterness. Regret, she says. I've had it too long. Someone giggles, nervously. But the priestess doesn't scold. She only stirs. At the far end of the circle, a girl no older than 16 steps forward. She hesitates, then presses her lips to the surface of the milk. It ripples. Someone gasps softly. You're told this is the seal of promise, a silent vow to one's reflection. To maintain it, protect it, reclaim it, if it ever begins to vanish. That's the real fear here. You realize, not death, not exile, fading, becoming invisible. One woman touches her cheek and murmurs, "Last week, a merchant asked if I was someone's aunt." It's said without malice, but it lands like a dagger. Another woman adds a piece of parchment to the bowl. Ink bleeds from it slowly. You catch a glimpse of a name. Hers, someone else is gone now. And as the milk swirls, petals drifting, the priestess's chant builds still soft, but charged now, like the air before a summer storm. One final line. What is kept in the skin may leave with the moon. Then silence. The women begin to rise. No one claps. No one speaks. One by one, they dip their hands into the milk, press their palms to their own cheeks, and turn away. Ritual complete. Whatever was offered is no longer theirs. You stay behind a moment longer. The milk is still, but not clear. Too much has dissolved in it. Too much has been said without sound. A few attendants approach with linen cloths and begin cleaning the space-gathering wilted petals, scooping the milk, rinsing the bowls. The priestess rises last, hands still slick with oil and something unseen. You finally ask, "Does it work?" She smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly, only if you believe you need it. And then she disappears into the corridor. You walk away slowly, trying not to look back. But part of you wonders what you might have offered. Night in the palace doesn't mean sleep. Not here. Not really. Once the sun disappears behind the ziggurats and the stars begin to blink into place, the court becomes a different kind of beast. Quieter. Yes, but not still. Stillness implies rest. This is something more complex. A performance of grace held just barely above collapse. You find yourself wandering back into the Queen's gallery, where the marble floors shine like water and the air hums with the quiet flutter of silk against skin. A row of women is seated along the edge of the chamber, each dressed in linen so fine it flutters with breath alone. Their faces are calm, still, perfect. Too perfect. You start to notice the small signs. The slumped shoulder quickly corrected, the slightly reddened eye carefully hidden by a smear of kohl, the breath held a second too long. These women are tired. Not just sleepy, exhausted. But you'd never know unless you watched closely. Which, of course, is what the palace trains everyone not to do. A servant passes with a tray of cooled cloth soaked in lemon and mint. Another offers a drink said to steady the breath and lift the eyes. One woman accepts both with a gracious nod, then whispers, "I haven't slept in 3 nights. They say yawning brings disfavour." You look closer. The women in this court are walking sculptures gilded, fragrant, composed. But beneath the oil and fabric and reverent posture is fatigue so deep it might crack the walls if spoken aloud. The Queen appears suddenly, her presence like a change in air pressure. Every woman straightens. The weariness disappears as if it was never there. She glides past without acknowledging anyone, but her scent, faintly cedar and milk, is enough to reset the room. Once she vanishes through the next door, the collective exhale is nearly audible. A younger concubine beside you leans forward, voice barely above a whisper. She sleeps for 3 hours. That's it. Her dreams are recorded, her breaths are counted. You ask who counts them. Someone who isn't allowed to blink. You're not sure if she's joking. You're not sure she is either. There's a chamber nearby known only as the still room. You've never entered it before, but tonight you do. Inside, rows of cushions are arranged like offerings. Women sit with their eyes closed, their bodies perfectly still. One attendant moves slowly among them, applying a cold balm beneath their eyes to hold off swelling. Another spritzes rosewater in the airnut at them, just near them, as if freshness can be absorbed without contact. This is not meditation. It's a performance of stillness, a kind of beauty discipline. One woman's fingers twitch. An attendant corrects her hand placement silently. You notice the walls of the still room are painted with serene scenes, fig trees, soft clouds, a river that doesn't exist. All illusions of calm, meant to trick the mind, maybe even the body. Outside the still room, you pass a tray of tablets left near a basin. Each one is inscribed with a single word: softness, peace, drift, surrender. A servant tells you they're pressed against the skin before sleep talismanic affirmations. Some say they work, some say they stain. You continue on, and the whispers return. One woman was found napping during a midday perfume preparation. Not asleep, just not blinking fast enough. She was reassigned, not punished, just rotated. That's how it works here. Fatigue isn't scolded, it's quietly removed. Even the food reflects this rhythm. Night meals are designed for minimal chewing, stewed dates, ground nuts, rose paste porridge. Nothing to exhaust the jaw, a kitchen boy explains, as if that's the most logical phrase in the world. You pass another chamber, a private dressing room. The lights are dimmed, and inside, a woman lies face down on a silk mattress. 2 servants applying oil to her back while a third lifts and lowers her arms in a slow, rhythmic movement. Muscle recall, the lead servant says. It helps her posture maintain during exhaustion. A fourth woman massages her jawline. She's been clenching in her sleep. She whispers, the clenching, the sleeplessness, the secret naps, the coal-hiding bloodshot eyes. It all comes together now. Even the architecture reflects it. You realize the doorways here are tall. Yes, but slightly too narrow. Not enough to squeeze, but enough to require awareness. They keep you upright, alert, performative. The marble floors are kept cool so the women won't grow drowsy from heat. The windows are shaped to let in light without glare, and the scents mint, camphor, rose, milk. They're rotated regularly to prevent olfactory fatigue. Every part of the palace is designed to combat the one enemy that cannot be named aloud, burnout. Because here, you are not allowed to collapse, not allowed to admit that 5 milk baths a day, 4 hair rituals, 12 different perfumes, constant competition, and a permanent smile might eventually erode even the most devoutly pampered skin. Rest, says one woman, is what happens to other people. She's reclining on a divan, being fanned by 2 boys no older than 10. Her eyes are open, her face luminous. Her fingers tremble as she lifts a goblet, but her hand never spills a drop. Last night, she adds, I dreamed I was in my old village, and no one looked at me. What did you do, you ask? She smiles faintly. I woke up crying. Then I had my tears blended into my perfume. You wait for the joke. It doesn't come. You leave her there, poised and glowing, her exhaustion polished until it passes for elegance. And as you return to your own chamber, one thought lingers in Babylon. Even your fatigue must be beautiful. These stars are almost gone when you step outside. A thin thread of light slices across the horizon, soft and golden and impossibly quiet. The palace is not awake yet, not fully, but neither is it asleep. There's a lull, a sigh in the stone itself, the moment just before everything begins again. You find yourself in the courtyard, drawn toward the centre fountain. By now, you've seen the rituals, the oils, the milk, the masks, the sacrifices, the whispered spells tucked behind hairpins, and still. A question hums gently beneath your ribs. What if none of it worked? A woman sits alone at the fountain's edge, combing her hair by the reflection of the water. Her robe is plain, her posture relaxed. You don't recognize her. Rare in this place where faces are memorized and movements catalogued. You sit beside her in silence. She looks at you, smiles. Do you know why this courtyard faces east? You shake your head. So the women could always rise with the sun, she says. They said youth was strongest at first light. Something about shadows not sticking when you face the morning. You glance at the worn mosaic beneath your feet, sunbursts, birds in flight, a lioness stretching. The tiles are chipped, weathered, but still beautiful, still holding the shape of something believed once, even if no one remembers quite why. I used to bathe in milk, she says after a while, every day, then every week, then not at all, and still, here I am. She dips her fingers into the fountain, lifts a few drops to her face, and pats them onto her cheeks. The water's cooler now, she says. Kinder. You realize, slowly, that this is the woman they once called the perfume queen, the one said to bleed rose oil, whose signature scent once stopped men mid-sentence. She doesn't smell like rose anymore. She smells like sleep, like quiet, like breath. People think beauty was the point, she says, but it was never that. Not really. You tilt your head. It was about staying. She continues, not fading, not being dismissed. Beauty was the language. Staying was the meaning. And now, as light softens the edges of her face, you see the lines that time didn't forget. They're not flaws. They're punctuation. She smiles again, watching your eyes linger. Good lighting, she says, was always half the trick. You both laugh, softly. The palace begins to stir. Footsteps, voices, the soft chime of bells carried in trays of linen and clay pots. Someone calls for more myrrh. Someone else asks if the Queen's bath is ready. The day turns its face toward the sky. But before you leave, the woman adds one more thing. They never talked about the light, about how it was shaped, placed, controlled. She gestures to the archways, the mirrors, the pools, the painted walls, everything designed not to show truth, but to reflect only what we needed seen. You follow her gaze upward, watching as the first full beam of morning light hits the tallest spire. It gleams for a moment, then softens again. Maybe none of it was real, she says, or maybe all of it was. That's the trick of Babylon. We made beauty, but we also made the story of it. She gathers her robe and walks back into the palace, barefoot, hair loose, and you stay there a moment longer, listening to the courtyard wake, to the sound of a place built on illusion, obsession, artifice, and something else, something softer, maybe even love. Love for ritual, for self-invention, for the silent power of staying seen in a world that forgets too quickly. Because maybe the secret to eternal youth was never in the milk, or the oils, or the chants. Maybe it was the light, the way it was angled, filtered, whispered across skin like a promise. Maybe the women of Babylon weren't chasing youth. Maybe they were chasing permanence, and maybe, just maybe, they caught it, if only for a few golden hours at dawn. And now, as the last sliver of moon fades behind the clouds and the sky turns from velvet to pearl, you feel your own breath slow. The corridors of Babylon retreat behind you, their fragrances dissolving into memory, their secrets folding gently shut like petals at dusk. You're not in the palace anymore. Not really. The marble has softened into your pillow. The oil lamps have become the quiet hum of your room, but the stories remain, clinging lightly to your skin, like coal, like steam, like the last warmth of the sun against stone. You remember the milk, so much milk, the whispered curses, the mirror that watched your thoughts before your face. You remember the weight of beauty carried not like jewelry, but like armor. You remember the silence, the stillness, the thousand small choices that made a woman not just noticed, but remembered. And now you rest, knowing that even in a world shaped by illusion, truth finds its way into the seams, not loud, not declared, but kept, like a pin tucked into a braid, like a petal pressed between pages, like a sigh between footfalls. So let your shoulders sink, let your breath lengthen. There are no mirrors here, no performance, just the steady beat of your own body, loyal and quiet. You are safe now. The palace is far behind. Sleep.